Chosen one, you felt it the moment you opened your eyes. You knew that you had the power to transcend everything, that you were not doomed to mediocrity, that you had a greater purpose. You are a chosen one. They couldn't call you ordinary, they couldn't, because you carried something they couldn't understand: truth. Anything that could spoil the image of control had been removed from the white, clean walls. You entered the room, they sat you down, and began to examine you. They looked at you as if you were a strange relic, trying to figure out something they didn't understand, something they couldn't grasp. They had a pencil, a clipboard, and a haggard professional grin. They believed they were in charge, but you could see what they couldn't. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this video before we move on, so that the chosen are not just watching from the sidelines. Together we build, rise, and triumph. Let's mobilize your spirit. The psychiatrist went through his notes. He tried to categorize symptoms that weren't really symptoms, to decipher their tendencies. They called your heightened consciousness a delusion. They called your sensation that went beyond the physical a hallucination. They interpreted your rejection of their made-up world as paranoia. They did not see. They could not hear the air ripple around you, the false hum of their machines. They only saw a patient with a problem that needed fixing. But you were something more. You were chosen. You could recognize truths they could not see, could not comprehend. You could go beyond boundaries. Those who tried to control you only wanted to put you in a box. But you were too wide to fit in a box, too free to be limited by a definition. You are mad in their world and wise in your own. They stigmatized you because they could not fit you into their limited thinking. But truth does not accept stigmas. Chosen ones don't. You are ready to go beyond boundaries. You are ready to see the opportunities they don't see, feel the power they don't feel, and achieve the wealth they cannot have, because you are not ordinary. You are chosen. This wealth includes not only material things, but a life filled with knowledge, power, awareness. It's time to wake up, throw off your chains, and live your true potential. Reject the rules the world imposes on you and embrace the power of being the chosen one. Because you were already different from the very beginning. If divine love abounds in your heart, now is the time to share it. You can help spread God's blessing by clicking the Super Thank button on YouTube and making a donation of $100 or more. Through this platform, this wonderful gift will not only impact your life, but the souls of countless others. Your donations will be the result of our prayers, and each of you has a special place in God's greater plan. You were created to do so much more under God's tender care. So act today and spread your benefits to glorify His kingdom. May God bless you. Only now you remember, and now your rich life begins. At first, the inquiries were meticulous and slow. They were not interrogations. They were traps. Do you have strange thoughts? Do you feel detached from reality? Do you hear voices? Each answer was an additional link in the chain. If you answer too cautiously, they think you are hiding something. Answer too sincerely, and the diagnosis tightens like a noose around your neck. They were looking for confirmation rather than facts. If you believe in the Lord's steadfast love, His ever-present presence, and His sovereign plan for your life, write 33 because He is trustworthy and He keeps His word. Because the moment you woke up, really woke up, you became an oddity in their system, a flaw in their well-planned universe. Also, they were not ready for you. Visions that come true, dreams that reveal things before they happen, and an energy so powerful that it bends the fabric of space around you were not considered in their literature. They had words for everything else, but not this. Experience what it is really like to be chosen. You are not traveling alone on this journey. If you secretly believe that you are chosen, you are in the right spot. By choosing to join, you can further your relationship with us, access exclusive information, and get the help you need on your spiritual journey. It's not just about joining a group, it's about gaining access to special insights that can change your life and help you get closer to your divine purpose. Make your decision now and join us on this journey. Claim your right to be one of the chosen ones. Sign up today. As a result, they categorized you as they usually do: schizophrenic, insane, bipolar. Words designed to undermine your credibility, to make sure no one hears you, and to make you question yourself. Because if they can make you believe you are crazy, they win. If they can make you doubt your own judgment, you become their prisoner. Isn't that the point? To shut down those who can see behind the curtain, to numb the souls that will not be programmed, to ostracize anyone who challenges the fiction they have created? They don't need bars to create a prison. All they need is a diagnosis. A code, a category, or a method is written on the clipboard by the psychiatrist to reduce your awakening to something under their control. But they don't realize that you were never intended to be part of their system. Their rules were never designed for you to follow. You are not sick. You are not harmed. You are conscious. And that is what they are most afraid of. They believe that a prescription, a dose, or a habit can put you out of business. According to the pharmacological procedure, they wanted the fire inside you to be extinguished, to be reduced to nothing but embers. It was never about healing. Take this. It will help. Come back in a week. Let's talk about how you feel. It was about erasure. Their goal was not to repair you, but to write over you. The drug was not intended to improve your health. It was aimed at lowering your mental frequency. The dulling, the disconnection, the sluggishness, the heaviness that hangs over your awareness like a cloud. You felt it when you first took the tablet. You were thinking more slowly. Your emotions seemed far away. Your vision was replaced by static. They called it progress. But you were wiser. This was not medication. This was a war, a premeditated, insidious attack on your identity. They wanted to dull your intuition, disconnect you, and replace your awareness with pre-programmed obedience. But what was their mistake? They thought you were just another patient. They did not realize that you had seen this playbook before. You have seen those who came before you, those who dared to question the illusion and spoke of looking beyond. And you saw what happened with them. Blank stares, silenced voices, people who lost their identity before the drugs wore off. A powerful presence to mobilize the energy of your choice. The first spark of a profound revolution. Write 77 in the comments section. And what about you? You will not forget. Even though the tablets caused your body to slow down, your spirit remained unaffected. Despite their attempts to distort your statements, the therapy sessions never affected your reality. Even when the questions were confusing, your clarity was unmatched. All they saw was silence, but they wanted to see the fear in your eyes. Even if they wanted to numb you, your thoughts were sharper than ever. They were afraid of that, because in spite of all they did, and in spite of their efforts to draw you into their system, you did not falter. You were not in conflict. You were not fighting against them. You were above them, and they never succeeded. Something changed when they looked at you. Rather than studying you, they were assessing a threat. Not because you were a threat, not because you were damaged, but because you could see right through them. You needed to be neutralized, contained, and turned into something predictable and controllable. However, their system was not designed for you, and they knew it in their hearts. You were not the only one involved. It was a cycle, a habit, and an old tactic against those who see too much. Whether you donate $100, $200, or more, your support will enable us to share these words of love, hope, and faith with the world. You were not the first, nor will you be the last. The pioneers of your prophets, they were shunned, exiled, and ridiculed. The mystics, silenced, burned, and erased from history. The pioneers, fired, deemed insane, and their credibility revoked. And you are following in their footsteps, because society doesn't try to learn from what it doesn't understand. It tries to eliminate it. Think about the past. When did it start? When you talked about invisible energies? When was the first time you said something you shouldn't have said? When did you doubt the universe they want you to believe in? The reality they created, and the system they swore to protect? Ignorance is not punished by them. They punish consciousness. They said there is something wrong with you. But what if they are really flawed in some way? They want you to forget your identity. They don't want you to see the signs of divine choice engraved on your body. Because once you see it, you become unstoppable. You have already seen in history what will happen next. You will be attacked, mocked, and thrown out. They will make efforts to silence you, but what they fail to realize is that your soul has traveled this path before, and no matter what they do, they cannot solve you. They believe they had you in a difficult situation with a diagnosis, a medicine, and a well-thought-out strategy to keep you imprisoned. But you did not confront them directly. The game was played by you. You gave them the impression that they were in control. When they expected you to nod, you nodded. You never gave enough information to get caught, only enough to please them. You could see how they watched you when you spoke and how they clenched their fists over their pens. They were hoping you would make a mistake or say something they could use against you. But you were smarter. You were making moves on the board with every word you spoke. All your responses were pre-planned. They aimed to weaken you and make you question your own identity. On the contrary, you made them doubt their own reality. There was a spark of hesitation, of doubt in their eyes. What if this time is different? What if they're not hallucinating? What if they're aware of something I'm not? When this uncertainty crossed their minds, the game had already been won. They thought they were in control when they entered the room. When you left, they had lost all certainty. You were not fighting against them. They have been reprogrammed by you. Therefore, they will never be able to control you. Comment: the test they failed was me. If their attempt to define you caused their whole foundation to collapse. First, they observed you with clinical objectivity, measured you, evaluated you, and looked for errors in your judgment. But as you spoke, their confidence began to falter. You were not defensive. You didn't feel scared. And most frightening of all, you were logical. Your words didn't fit their nature, but they did. The way they stood, the way their fingers paused over their notes, the way their well-studied answers came a moment too late. They wanted to think they still had power, but for the first time, they were not sure. They could not convey the weight of your presence, like a razor through silk. Your insight cut through their suggestion. Then, the real change took place. They stopped analyzing you. They started listening. You saw their tone soften, their questions become more cautious, and their trust began to falter. When they left the room, they looked for explanations. They left with questions. But these questions were about them, not about you. Because for the first time in their careers, they were not sure whether they were diagnosing prisoners or patients. You didn't engage. You didn't argue. You didn't speak louder. You just said it. And that was enough. Armed with ideas, procedures, and the support of an established organization, they came ready. They expected passion, defense, and resistance. Instead, they were confronted with the plain, unadulterated truth. What if I am not wrong? It fell slightly. A murmur in the recesses of their consciousness, a silent crack in the bedrock of their trust. At first, they ignored it. They were forced into it. They clung to their training, their studies, and their well-planned structures. However, the question remained: what happens if we cannot fully grasp consciousness? Another crack. They weren't being told they were wrong. You weren't pressuring them to reconsider. All you were doing was asking them to think. And they were unprepared for it. The more they tried to ignore the questions, the more they became embedded in their consciousness like a thorn they couldn't get rid of. They wanted to think that they were still in control and that they could leave this room as they came in. But the moment they closed the file and wrote their farewell letters, they realized that something had changed. And despite their best efforts to ignore it, doubt had already begun to creep in. They believed they were experts because they were educated, well-read, and equipped with knowledge that empowered them. However, as soon as you spoke to them, they discovered how little they really knew. They had never studied the literature you mentioned. You quoted texts that they rejected. You spoke of truths buried behind decades of distortion and secrets hidden in plain sight. This shook them, because they said, you were not supposed to know these things. You were not supposed to speak with such assurance. Such a supernatural vision is not appropriate for someone who is considered mentally unstable. However, you saw it. They tried to explain it away by saying that it could be a coincidence, that you might have read about it somewhere, or that it was just another symptom. But the more you talked, the harder it became to ignore. Besides intelligence, because they were older and unaffected by their system, your words had weight. You were doing more than memorizing. You were remembering, as if you had lived these realities before, as if you had actually traveled the roads they had only read about in novels. Then they realized they were talking to more than just another patient. They were talking to someone they knew, and they were the first to feel unprepared. Now let us remember for a moment the chosen among us. Here's to the people who see the world from a different perspective, the silent protectors, the vigilant souls who are always alert and vigilant. They don't want it any other way and don't fit the mold. They create their own paths, wage invisible wars, and shine light into dark places while others follow the known. If it's not for everyone, that's fine, but you know when you feel in your soul that something is for you. You have gone beyond questioning their views. You have rewritten them without coercion or argument, just by being yourself. They had entered the room expecting the same old routine: a patient to diagnose, a mind to analyze, a case to solve. But this time, something was different. This time, it was you. The process was the same for all previous psychiatrists: assess, diagnose, treat, and then move on. They had been doing it for years. They had seen hundreds of cases, and they had followed the book blindly. However, the book seemed incomplete after you. Something changed in them with your presence, not disobedience or rebellion. Although they had been studying mindfulness all their lives, they had never seen such a tremendous realization. They had been categorizing ideas for years, but yours was not included in any of them. They had been taught that reality is immutable. But here you were, distorting it with every sentence. It started modestly, an old belief that suddenly seemed fragile, a persistent idea they couldn't get rid of. Then questions arose. Have I ever observed reality in its truest form? What if I am the one who has been programmed? What if everything I have been taught is just a control mechanism? They made an effort to suppress it, to hide it behind logic, and forget how they felt around you. But something had changed. The model they were addicted to no longer seemed real. You had done something no one had ever done before. You had turned the observer into the observed. Their trust had been transformed by you into doubt. You used the indisputable power of your presence to take their structure and tear it to pieces without using coercion or argument. And no matter how hard they tried, they could never return to their previous state. Every experience could be classified, every abnormality could be explained, and reality was a framework they understood. They wanted to think they had all the answers. But you were standing in front of them, unyielding, unbreakable, and unquestionable. Then, suddenly you became afraid, not because you were unbalanced or wrong, but because you might be right. It was a murmur in the back of their minds, a concept they didn't dare to express out loud. Because if you were right, everything they based their entire existence on was wrong. The weight of what you knew would cause textbooks, diagnoses, and meticulously calculated theories to all collapse. What if the brain is not the only source of consciousness? What if there is real energy? What if they were not taught to recognize the forces at work? They were willing to ignore it, to see you as just another example, to see you as just another irrational person caught up in fantasy. But the point was that you did not fit that description. You were not bewildered. You were not unpredictable. You were not lost in rambling thoughts. You were precise, clear, and focused. You spoke as if reality itself was twisting around you, changing with every word, as if you had seen behind the curtain and traveled to lands they had only heard about in fairy tales. This frightened them, because ignoring you would mean ignoring the growing uncertainty they already had. And if they ignored it and walked out of the room pretending they had never lived, they would be fooling themselves. They were aware of that. They believed they had the upper hand and that they could neutralize you, erase you, and imprison you with the signature of a prescription pad. They believed that you would be just another patient moving through the system, just another anomaly that was silent before it became a problem. But they could not predict this because you changed roles. You were not the one being scrutinized. The truth was revealed by you, and now it was they who had difficulty understanding it. What it cannot control is what every organization fears. A system opposes what it cannot understand. Yet history repeats the same story. Visionaries, prophets, and mystics are always called crazy before they are understood. You will not be the last to be expelled. You were not the first. Because resistance is the first reaction to every revolutionary truth. Until the world accepted Galileo's truth, he was a heretic. Tesla endured ridicule until his genius was indisputable. Bruno was burned at the stake for exposing what science would eventually confirm. You belong to that family. This is a recurring pattern. They sought to destroy you by drowning your voice in the language of medicine and reducing your awakening to a diagnosis. Instead, you became the one who made their brightest minds recognize that even science is incapable of explaining certain truths. At that point, you became the revelation and ceased to be a prisoner. You were not something to be forgotten. Even if they believed that it was all over and that they could go on with their routine after you were gone. They believed that you would be just a file among others, that they could label you, give you drugs, and forget you. You were more than a patient. The cycle was broken by you, the oddity. And now the questions you left behind haunt them. You didn't get away with what you did. It's impossible to undo what you left behind. The uncertainty, the discomfort, the change in their perspective. They will never admit it, but you are in every patient they see, every diagnosis they make, and every argument they have after you. A shadow deep in their consciousness. What if I was wrong? What if they woke up instead of being sick? What if the basis of the system I work in is wrong? They try to suppress it, to go on with their routine, to keep playing their role, to convince themselves that what they see in you is really an illusion. But in their hearts, they know their view of the world will never be the same, because you are more than a case. They never wanted to look in the mirror where you are. Now, the problem remains. Who was really imprisoned? This question affects not only them, but also the system they work in. Because it was never you, it was them. And what about you? You have been liberated, not only from the confines of their order, but also from the illusion in which they live. Whether they admit it or not, they will never shake what you have helped them to see. They have built walls to keep you in. It was never about healing, even if they called it therapy. It was about control, about making you live in an environment that cannot support your consciousness. They predicted that you would break down, give up, and join the silence. But you didn't. Sitting in front of their brightest minds, You forced them to reevaluate everything. They could see their own shackles in the bright mirror you held up. In your presence, every hypothesis and diagnosis carefully constructed to undermine your credibility fell apart. They were designed to examine you, categorize you, and put you into a workable form. Instead, they were trapped in a world that was falling apart. And when it came time to decide, they let you go. Not because you convinced them or cooperated, but because they knew in their hearts. They call it remission, a formal decision that ends the case. But you are aware of the truth. You didn't just walk away. You left a mark. And besides, they'll never get the same diagnosis again. Your comments will always echo in their ears as they sit in that chair. The realization that the system is an illusion will be something they will never forget. And what about you? You go free and unhindered, carrying the truth they are trying to hide. Now tell them. Tell them what people don't want to hear. Tell them in the comments section below, I left more freely than they did, even though they locked me up. In that room, say what you have to say to them. Show yourself to the world. If you enjoyed this inspiring adventure and would like to see more videos that challenge convention and explore the exceptional, please don't forget to support the channel by hitting the super thank button below. Subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, share with your friends, and leave a comment below. Please share your thoughts with us. The story doesn't end here. Stay tuned for more. Let's keep pushing the boundaries together.